favorite rappers, and I enjoyed the content of his message and the overall story that he likes to tell
Oh my
in
God.
his music. I think there is an abject absence of positivity in hip-hop nowadays, and with the way the world is going in such a positive and supportable direction, I believe we need more of that message. To just stay the course, things are fine.
This is fun.
Are we ready to go? And again, it's the
We're live.
VPC Round 2 round table. I've got two of the judges, the important ones, the returning champions from the previous round, Kronktaku, to just visit it briefly so we can set the stage. You guys annihilated the VPC last year. You left nothing but salted and scorched earth in your path. Literally nothing good can grow here, and that's why we have round 2, the cover song challenge.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree with that.
There have been a lot of weird indiscrepancies, we'll call them, that have gone on this round. Most notably is in the difference between judges' scores. We've got several songs that were scored really highly by the public and then scored low across the judges' table, and some spots where you guys really disagreed with each other.
Yeah.
Let's cut right to the chase here. Richie Branson, off the top of your head, what was a song from the VPC, maybe not your favorite, but a song you really enjoyed and you were kind of alone in the fact that you really enjoyed it?
It might have been from this round. I would probably say, geez, what was that song? The Rock Crow song, Jazz Joint. I feel like I really enjoyed that a lot more than everybody else, it seemed. I mean, everybody seemed to enjoy it, but man, that song got my top score.
That song got your top score. That was your favorite.
That one and Hell If I Knows. Those two got my tops.
So then let's dissect that. Since we did pick your favorite right off the bat, what about the cover song challenge allowed this track to be your favorite from, like, even if we were going to line all of these submissions up and we have to pick the most damaged piece of fruit out of this shit pile, you've got one. What made this piece of fruit the most appealing piece of fruit in the shit pile of fruit for you?
Well, part of it I took into consideration the last song they did, which rhyme artist, he's a really dope lyricist. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's cool. But it was mixed terribly. It was the first song they did, the first round was mixed really bad. So I shaved off a lot of points for that. The second song, though, it had it sounded live. Like, it sounded like you were really at some jazz lounge somewhere. You know, it didn't sound like a studio recording per se, more like somebody who just was in the jazz lounge and recorded it. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I felt like I was in some hole in the wall listening to somebody do that. And the fact that it was this same dude who in the last round was really killing it from a lyricist point of view as a rapper, to turn around and be able to like do this like jazz loungy singy thing, I thought that was pretty impressive.
So
very impressive.
So Desh, give me the flip side of the coin here.
That's a bad example because I actually got my highest score too. We actually
really.
Yeah, I think Thomas and Brandon disagreed with us on that, but I gave it a 9.75. But I did.
And they didn't bother to show up.
Thomas actually gave it a 10, so he scored it even higher than you two did.
Oh, so it was just Brandon? Was it just?
Yeah,
Brandon?
that was just Brandon. So that wasn't really a good example of one that you liked that didn't do good all around, because that seems to be one of the really good tops.
Wow, so that was just an example of Brandon being a dick judge. Okay, let's move on to another song example. We had mentioned Hell If I Know. Zarina, could we run down the votes for Hell If I Know?
Hell If I Know, let me see.
7, 9, 9, 10.
There you go, 7, 9, 9, 10 with a voter score of 9.
And who was the 7?
Brandon.
Huh, ain't that some shit? Let's talk about another one, just out of the blue. Go to Bread. I kind of stand alone here. I've read some of the other reviews. I watched the Emerald Empire's video. I thought this approach to Rock Lobster was like one of the best polished turds of our selections this round.
Oh, I was
where do
snarky
we?
on my comments. I was snarky on my comments here.
And that's fair. It's totally fair to do. I think trying to take a Marilyn Manson-esque approach to Rock Lobster is risky to begin with, right? You've got to be ready to eat that entire truffle before you take the first bite. What did you guys think about Rock Lobster? It was a cover, but it was a really unique approach to the cover by one of the groups that I think had the most potential to excel at this challenge.
So for me, and again, you know, I'm not like only doing Vox, but primarily I'm looking at Vox. I said, while you sound like a Power Rangers villain in most of the song, you make it fun. I think what I enjoyed about it was the approach was very creative, and like I enjoyed like the screaming attempts, or like, because it wasn't bad. It just didn't feel like it fit. Like it didn't ever really gel to me. It kind of felt like it was like, hey, I've got these good ideas. It kind of felt like the first hip hop tunes that I did that I put on YouTube, where like the flow was dope, but like the overall mix and how it came together was a little weird. That's kind of overall how I felt about the track. Felt like they were trying too hard and didn't execute it completely by the time the deadline hit.
So that begs an interesting question, right? You're primarily judging on lyrical content, flow, and delivery.
And obviously lyrics are out the window this round. So it's
right. In a cover round, unless somebody adds or supplements, you have very little to go on from an originality perspective, right? So did you find that for at least this round, your decision making was affected by mixing and other technical elements?
A little, but for the most part, I just went with how people approached the track vocally. Because there was so much variance in how people actually came at the track. Like for example, I thought Camouflage's "Be Prepared" joint was really, really dope. And I thought it just felt sinister to me. It was fun. I thought it was a good take on it. But there wasn't really anything that I felt like I couldn't approach because of the lack of creativity. I knocked that squad. I mean, I think the thing that messed me up is knowing how well people could rap and feeling like they interpreted the challenge too strictly. And I may have been a little unfair in being like, yo, you should have. And in my head, I'm like, this dude totally could have dropped a verse right here, and he did not, or she did not. And that was more like the only thing that really bothered me about my ability to fairly and effectively judge the entries.
So, Richie, in that respect, you're now on the opposite side of this argument. You've got more to judge on a content basis than the lyricist judge would. Is it diarrhea? What just happened? Okay, good. So what do you think when you approach when you have to approach these tracks? Are you looking for a new, unique take on the musical content? Are you looking for, like MC117's track, he completely borrowed a beat from a different song and made almost a mashup kind of thing with the jump into the world as we know it thing?
Yeah, I thought that was really creative. That was another one. I think I gave that one my second highest score, along with Camouflage's record. What I'm looking for. Yeah, what I'm looking for mostly, I like to hear like a mixture of originality with the source material. Like, how well can you flip it? You know, it some people, they chose to stick a little more closely to the source material, and that's fine if you can do it well. You know, if you can't do it well, then it would have paid off kind of moving around. So the way they did the End of the World and You Know It joint, like, that was really dope. You know, instead of saying, well, let's keep it with the rock vibe and all that, they totally like changed it and mashed it up with another old school sample, and I thought that was really, really dope.
Okay, I want to stick with this. And Flo, you're nodding your head in agreement. Do you also think that borrowing a highly identifiable sample from a similar era song for use in a cover challenge, was that viable for you, or do you think that was too close to skirting a mashup? Like, a mashup and a cover are not the same thing.
I thought it was totally fine. Honestly, I felt like, and coming into this, I think I probably have been on the more lenient side. relative to the challenges, just because I feel like there's a lot of room for interpretation. So I've been a little bit more merciful than I think other judges have.
You have been the really, really nice judge. Like, you are just so nice. Like, it can be the worst song in the world, and you're just like, it was awful but pretty. Like, you always have something good, and you're like, I'll still give it a 10 for effort.
So the point, like, I feel like there's a lot of potential, right? So I want to make sure that people can come up. So I'm trying to like say whatever positive I can pull out of the song. But as far as that challenge goes, when I saw what the challenge was, I was like, yeah, this is gonna be very varied in how people take it. So that's kind of where my mindset is there, as far as just like not being really worried about how people approach it.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking you for like finding a positive in the song. I think that's great. I'm just knocking you for the 10 for effort.
It's not that
your
serious.
score is just really high. That's all.
I gave some 4s and 3s out this round.
This round, yes. First round, not so much.
So I'd say some of the 4s and 3s were earned. But before we get to some of the 4s and 3s, we just rattled off a couple of songs, and I had set this up intentionally. I want to address one very specific question that had a follow-up that we got when we were talking about doing this show. And I'm going to preface this by saying, A, I love this guy, but I'm not pulling any punches when we talk about this topic. And B, you need to play your audience. This is a competition. And just like we established, Richie Branson, we know what you're looking for. Clean, smooth, harmonic beats. Heavy hitters, bangers. Flo, we know what you're looking for. A creative and engaging delivery with a unique style and recognizable flow. It's simple. Now, when we're playing to the audience, right, there may be questions about the boundaries that the VPC sets up, and this challenge opened the door for a lot of those questions. It seems to me that the more broad the instructions may be, the more kickback we get, because when left to their own devices, Nerdcore will, like in this round, kind of drop the ball in an effort to meet what they think the challenge outlines and then sacrifice their own creativity to get there. So, Cloth and Pop, the question about whether or not the VPC, when it publishes its challenges, and then the interpretation of that message on behalf of the participants and the judges, may not consistently align at all times. Let's start this discussion. Richie and Kadesh, do you guys believe there was a disconnect here between what you thought the challenge was about and what the participants thought the challenge was about?
I think maybe more of that was round 1 as opposed to round 2. I thought it was pretty clear, cover song, taking. I thought it was pretty clear, at least on my end. Now, I can't say the same for round 1 per se, at least with respect to, some of the production aspects of it. But for the most part, they still managed to get that. So, I don't know.
I agree. Totally.
You agree?
100%, yeah.
Like in and I wasn't paying attention, so I'm just going to agree now that it's quiet.
Nah, I agree. I agree that it's probably more with round 1. The disconnect was probably stronger with round 1 than round 2. I kind of felt like it was pretty straightforward. I felt like it could be interpreted in a lot of different ways because it's covered. So, like, my thought was, well, some people are probably going to do a song and have verses, and some people are going to do the exact song, and that's what happened.
That's what you got. You got what you expected. Yeah. So this flows into another totally legit question we got from Project Zero that I think we can follow up with, which is, now knowing we're playing to the audience and each judge is going to have their own criteria, which we can totally discern just from what we know about you guys and your previous performance, is there a standard set of metrics? Is there some kind of matrix that you fill out when you're scoring these songs?
Yes.
Like in this round, what sets like Ill Gill's track down at a 3 and MC117's track up at a 9?
So for me, I didn't do it in this round because I felt like this was more open, being that it was a cover round. But this entire competition, like the rest of it, as long as it's not another cover round. In the first round, I had an acronym because I was adamant on having one. And it's flow, and each letter is a rubric point. So F is obviously for flow, which is a combination of how you're delivering, whether your energy is consistent relative to what I feel like you're trying to do, what you seem to be trying to convey. L is lyrics or lyricism, and that speaks for itself. O is like the observance of the challenge. So per our lovely Zarina's commands, we had to have something in there that was, making sure that there were points deducted if challenge wasn't met, blah, blah, blah. And then the W is the whole feel or total package or whatever. And that's just 1 point. So it's 3, 3, 3, and then 1 for me.
So it's binary. You either like it or you don't.
I do it. I do increments of a quarter. So I could give a song a 0.75 out of 1 for W. But that in a nutshell. And in the first round, if you check, I left a note on the top of my name. I left a note in my name on the top of the column for my scores that lays that out, and I will for every round, just so you guys who are listening know. Like, you can go and reference. Like, this is how I'm judging these.
Excellent, excellent. Richie, what about you? What's your standard mode of operation when judging these tracks?
It's basically, man, look, okay. One, fucking, obviously production values, like how clean your mix is, beat. The beat is important to me, obviously, as a beatsmith myself. So essentially, the bottom line is this. Look, and to give an example with the RA Crow team, giving them a 9. Now, their production values on that song weren't perfect. There were some mixing issues. There were some quantization issues on the drums. But my standard for whether or not to dock you for that is whether it takes away from the song or not. Now, in their case, it did not take away from my ability to enjoy the song at all. And I look at it from would a standard consumer be able to point those flaws out and be like, damn, this kind of is bringing it down. Now, on the flip side, the team that covered Team Fat Smith, the ones that did the I Write Smiths Not Tragedies, the beat was dope. The beat was really good, but the fucking auto-tune killed that song to me. That song was dead to me because the auto-tune wasn't applied in a pleasing manner to the ear, and it was noticeable. So, yeah, in my case, I tend to look at the production values to see whether or not it's adding to the song or subtracting, or if it's just a wash. I'm also listening just to see if the song jams overall. Like, if it's dope and you've managed to capture my ear, you're gonna win. So it almost boils down to this: if your production values in terms of mixing, mastering, etc., aren't solid, if you can mask those with a really good song, in terms of everything else, to the point where it's not egregious, then you might not see as much getting taken off. But you can have the cleanest production values and everything is dope, but if it's just not a good record, then you may not get a great score. You'll get all right though, because I am really focusing mostly on the production values. But again, you have to strike that balance between having good production values, but also just a good record. Because you forget part of production, it's not all about how good your mix is, how good your beat is, but it's have you managed to put together something that sounds good and people will want to hear over and over. That's the main job. Fuck all that other stuff. Like, if you have that ability to use your ear to put together something that's just dope, and it boils down to the lyricism. Like, as a producer, you need to be, putting those beat drops in, and building something around your vocalist. You can't just take vocals and slap them on a beat and mix it really well and think that you did a good job as a producer. There's a little bit more than that, So you have to work on making sure that the song is structured well. Don't leave that all up to your vocalist to structure the song and say there needs to be a hook here or this needs to be a bridge. Like, you have to actively engage that too. And that's what I'm looking for.
So, and again, just because we're trying to clarify a point of contention, what I heard you guys just break down is deliver your lyrics clean and with complexity. Don't give me a boring beat, And if you don't think someone could suffer through this song more than once, maybe spend more than 20 minutes slapping this shit together 2 days before it's due.
Unless you're Branson and Kadesh.
Like, I did that the last competition. Like we did everything on the last day it was due.
Well, and clearly these guys aren't y'all. So there you go, Nerdcore. You've been given the secret code, the walkthrough, the player strategy guide for the competition is actually simple. Make decent fucking tracks. So let's talk about a few that weren't, because there were several. And though I don't want to hit every single song, I know a lot of people listening probably aren't going to have their track mentioned by name. And trust me, this evening that may be a good thing. Let's grab a few out of the air and talk about why they were low scorers. In particular, let's talk about, well, first, we got to give a shout out to Jalamus Prime, the unfair underdog. Jalamus, you're a champion in my eyes, and I love you forever. Who was our other lowest scoring team this round?
Yeah, Flying Fortress.
Flying Fortress. I actually name dropped Ilgil earlier, and this is unfortunate. I like Ilgil, and I like Flying Fortress. I like the material that they produce, but it seems consistent in their VPC showings that it's not a high priority for them. How did you guys feel about this track?
I'm reading Brandon's comments. I'm sorry. Oh man, he did not have to savage me, Brandon. If you're listening, this is so savage, dude. Oh my God. Anyway, I was really bothered because I know that Ilgil can deliver. And I think the only thing that's unfair, as far as I'd say any of us judging this, is that it's a community, and it's worse. It's definitely worse when I know you can do much better than what you do. I feel like it automatically puts me in a bad mood. But I don't know why he couldn't have. I don't know why they couldn't have written verses out, maybe, and done some kind of interpretation. Just something that wasn't like singing and messing with the pitch terribly and everything that just happened. I don't really think there was anything particularly good about that track. And again, it's disappointing because I know they can make a good track. I probably would have been more constructive if it was a team I knew was a little bit more on like a newer level than these guys who aren't and can do some pretty good work. So that's kind of where I was on it.
Yeah, I feel like really I could interpret this song like a plane. Okay, it had the beat taken out. It was on its way up to cruising altitude. And then the captain said, all right, put on you turn on the auto-tune sign and the fasten seatbelt sign. As soon as you put that auto-tune sign, that shit crashed. No survivors.
No survivors.
No, for real. Like, the beat was actually decent. Like, I think I said that in the comments. Like, the beat was all right. You know, there were some dissonance issues on the low end. But the auto-tune, man, like, And the key to using auto-tune right, there's two things. One, it takes a while as a singer. Like I use auto-tune all the fucking time, but it takes a while to really get your voice. There's a certain way you want to spit, or the best way, like, and this is weird. What I do when I record things in auto-tune is I have the auto-tune already on. The effect is already enabled as I'm recording, so I could hear exactly how I'm sounding as I'm moving through the harmonies or the scales or whatever. You know, because I can't sing for shit. But you know, my auto-tune singing is alright. You know, but that's because I sing with the auto-tune on. That's one. Now you may
half of that.
You know, now the other aspect of it is when you're using auto-tune, you can't just slap the effect on there and not tweak anything. And it sounds like that's what may have happened here. If you slap the effect on there and you don't really do anything to it, it's just chromatically just searching for the next note, and it's not necessarily in the scale of the song. So you have to actually set the auto-tune to a specific scale that matches the scale of your instrumental. Otherwise, you're not guaranteeing that the pitch correcting is actually correcting on the same scale as your production.
So you're saying somebody with production experience and auto-tune experience may recognize harmonic dissonance as a half-assed attempt to utilize one of these plugins or resources and failing to do so in a most effective or professional manner, thereby reducing the overall enjoyability of their submission.
There you go. And I think on this
Imagine
song,
that.
it was really apparent when I guess there was like some doubles that were going on in the background during the Living in America part. And it was like on a totally different key, so it just harmonically just crashed to me. And so on that particular song, I think I scored it a 4. It could have got like a 6, maybe 6.5 if the auto tune was on point, And I gave it a 4 though, because at the end of the day, it was kind of cool, it was my favorite song of the round because I just imagined that shit being rocky, like. I wanted to overdub the original song during that sequence with Apollo Creed and James Brown and put that in there just for the hell of it. I think that would be hilarious.
And I'm glad you mentioned it because I think that plays a lot into some of the questions that people have about scoring. I also really enjoyed the immediate Rocky throwback. It was instantaneous for almost everybody, and it was super enjoyable. But like we've established, we know Flying Fortress and their capabilities, and that comes into play when criticizing or analyzing their VPC submissions. Let's go to another low-scoring round from somebody that's completely new.
Can I say something really quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
The track you go to. But from a vocal standpoint, if you're going to sing and you're not a good singer, which was a lot of this round, the teams that did the best with it owned however the heck they sounded. Like they just did it and owned it. I think the biggest mistake that vocalists are making so far in this challenge is coming in like you're aware of what you're not good at instead of coming in like I'm going to absolutely crush this even if I'm completely atonal, which is how you should approach it. Because if you come in with that confidence and you imagine like from a mental standpoint that your delivery is going to be on point, even if it's not, it's going to be better than what it probably would be if you go in assuming that you're not going to do it well and then try to overcompensate it with something like auto-tune. Like come in like you're about to own it, like you're coming for heads. Literally every time you step to the microphone to do something, not just in this competition, but period.
What's up, Ali? Ali asked if we're going to the Wreck the Studio. Wreck the Studio.
Are you gonna wreck the studio?
At what do you call it? Otakon.
Oh yeah. Hey. Anyway.
So there's your shout out. While we're at it, Lamp God, talk about me on the podcast. You've been my friend for a long time, and I've seen your testicles. They're mediocre. All right, so as I was saying, there's another low-scoring round here, but unlike Flying Fortress, it's a completely new breed. Brand new to Nerdcore, and actually, in my opinion, having watched these go down a few times, I think these kids entered specifically to just take part in the contest. What is Jess Autry's team name?
Or Zobian Rhythm?
Or Zobia.
If we were going to listen or re-listen to any one song with a fresh perspective, this would have been my first choice because I feel like when the VPC is looking for potential and encouraging new artists to try and invest more in their craft, that this is one of those needles in the haystack. There's a lot of potential here. It wasn't well received, and that's not surprising. A lot of freshman attempts are not well received. But I saw something here that made me look forward to future submissions. Were you guys aware this was a brand new team? And if not, would you rescore this track knowing they're a brand new team?
Don't either of you dare say no you weren't aware.
Nah, I was definitely, you said something for sure. And actually, this was probably the hardest song for me to deal with because I spent a lot of time. I listened to this song like 7 times, and that was difficult. But like I was trying to find something to constructively say about it, and it was I couldn't. Like, and I'm not saying that to be like, it actually bothered me because I was like, why would you do this in this sense? Like, I can't say anything. Like, I didn't feel like there was anything that was really good about it that I could, like, say something that they could build on. And that's probably because it was a cover round. Like, if there were, like, a lot of original bars, I probably would have had more to work with, just to be honest. So I like apologize that I was sitting there like, dog, I just really wish I could say something valuable in these comments, and I'm just sitting here listening like, Ryan, you gotta come up with something. You gotta come up with something. It just didn't work out. It didn't work.
So your only piece of advice on this bit would have been try again.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah. I think like keep trying. I guess like don't take this in such a way that you don't keep making stuff. But
Well, lay it out flat. Was this an attempt that you'd say, look, this just maybe it's not for everybody, and maybe it's not for you, or keep trying. We'll see you in round 3.
I don't know enough about them to say that. I don't think to say like this isn't your thing. I
Richie,
feel like
you
right now you should do that. They should keep going.
Well, see, like when I listened to it, I thought it was I thought that it may have been a troll song. Like I thought, oh, these people are just trolling, just throwing something together. But I didn't know for sure, so I tried to actually give some. Like in my comments, I talked about the drums and the melody and the vocals, and it was around. I told them that, and I was serious about it because the one thing that I noticed though is they did have fun making it. You could hear that they were they were cool. They were just having fun. I didn't know that it was a new team though. I found out. I'll just
maybe
in Richie's defense.
Maybe we should read our messages a little bit more often.
You get it gets like 50 comments deep in like 2 minutes though.
I get you. I'll forgive you. Okay.
Sorry to steal your thunder, Richie.
So I thought I was like, yo, like it's not really good. If I had to rescore it, I would still give it a 2, and that's just because it's a 2 to me in terms of execution. Like new or not, it's kind of like if you go into the NBA and you've never played basketball a day in your life, they're not going to give you 4 points every time you make a shot just because you're new. So I wouldn't change the score, but my feedback though, again, it was, I could have. At first I wanted to be like WTF, but I was like, nah, let me actually give some feedback in my comments or whatever because I didn't know if it was a troll or not. I didn't want to take a chance, but no.
That's a fair assumption. We've got some trolls, right? And one thing Nerdcore is famous for, whether I have anything to do with this or not, is not being supportive or receptive of new talent when that talent isn't obvious.
Do it.
Shut up. I'll be honest and fair about it. I will be one of the first people to tell a noob that is awful to go fuck themselves with their new Shure microphone because that's the best use they'll ever get out of it. Like I'll do that in a heartbeat. Is the VPC an appropriate place for that? Are we duty bound to encourage new people, or are we in the same respect duty bound to warn them that this is not the place to cut your teeth? Going forward as judges, not as competitors now, but as judges in the system, do you want to see more brand new faces attempting to meet these challenges? Or do you want to see more established artists competing for the top spot?
Well, it's kind of a mixture of both. I mean, you want to have a higher quality in terms of the competition, but on the same token, you do want fresh faces and people to spread awareness of it. So I almost feel like it's a double-edged sword in that respect. And I would say, like, to be honest, like I give my hats off to Orzobian Rhythm because that's something I wouldn't do. Like if I was that new, I would never. I remember telling a story like the way I got feedback on my music was to lie and say Timbaland made it and see if people were like, yo, this is dope. I wasn't even courageous enough to put my own name next to my music, so I really have to salute them, on just the fact that they submitted something that was fresh. They're not really in this. They don't really have that much experience on the production tip. So, I give them salute. And next time on their next entry, I'm going to be looking at it as far as my feedback. I'm going to be giving it feedback from a, different place. Because if it was an experienced team that came out with that, they would get the Brandon face, And so
sure they would. But do you feel like now in round 3, are you going to be more forgiving in your scoring, or are you going to stay true to your scoring methods while still being a little more forgiving in your comments?
No, I'll be as true to my scoring methods, because you can't get through life with somebody giving you extra, telling you got an 8 when you're really at about a 5. So they have to know where they're at in the bigger scheme of things. But my feedback will be more cognizant of that, and it'll be tailored towards giving them steps on how to improve their score. And I think I'm going to do that with every team. Really, is just I try to say, well, this could be use this or this could do that. Just to kind of throw those little nuggets out there to say, hey, try this on your next one and see how it works out. I think the biggest one I do that with is vocals on using a high pass filter. A lot of people, I don't think they know what that is or why you want to use that, but yeah, high pass filter, you goddamn vocals, damn it.
I like it.
So on that note, Beaker, from my perspective, with the whole newbies cutting their teeth in the VPC, I honestly feel like there's 2 different VPCs that go on during the entirety of the competition, and you've got those top probably 7 or 8 teams that are actually competing for the end prize, the glory of coming in first, or a second or a third, because that's still pretty, that's pretty impressive to come in and do. But you've also got those teams that are coming in with absolutely no intention of winning. They know they're not. They know they're not going to be competitive in the top. It's almost like you've got the learning aspect where they know they're going to be in the bottom. They want to see if they can do the challenge of, the writing prompts, if nothing else. And they just want to be able to learn.
I agree with that, and I like that position. Flo, what do you think? I assume same kind of position, support them knowing full well that they're in it for the experience and not the win, or do you think that this should be a all or nothing, all in kind of fight?
I don't really. I think I should be supportive, but on the flip side of that, I don't approach anything. The only way I approach anything is all or nothing.
All or nothing, all in, win.
If somebody asks me to feature on a track, I'm trying to destroy them on it. If somebody asks me to be on their show, I'm trying to destroy them on it. Period. Like, that's just how I feel. And it's not like I absolutely gone on and wrecked people's tracks who I love dearly. Like, I feel like that's what's supposed to happen.
And so I feel that way too, man. Like, game recognized game from Flo's side, balls recognize balls from Richie's side. And I think Klopp makes a great point here. If we approach it seriously, we get things like Shubzilla, who in the first VPC came out to be, in my opinion, the strongest female MC in nerdcore since her arrival. She was a brand new fresh face that nobody had a whole lot of expectations for, but absolutely slaughtered the competition and is now cutting hot records and doing really awesome things for nerdcore. Do you think that the VPC had anything to do with that, or has anything to do with the development of anybody's position in nerdcore?
Yes, and she says that, and we talk a lot. Like, a few of us talk a lot.
You know Shubs a little bit. You guys chat every now and then.
Yeah, she says that, and honestly, Shubs is a person I tend to work with people who inspire me, and Shubs is one of those people just from like that story. And to Richie's point about how he started, y'all talking about like people cutting their teeth and whatnot. So I don't know how many people know this story. Richie and I started doing nerdcore around the same time. But Richie has way more of a production and music industry standpoint, pedigree than I do. I've just been rapping for a long time. I've made beats that were good conceptually from a musicality standpoint as a jazz trombonist, but weren't mixed well. And I literally would take Richie's records, and I don't think I've ever told him this. I would take Richie's records and take them to people I knew what was going on musically, and ask them what was making his vocals stand out and what was it making his beat mixes stand out. Because like, I felt like he was like the internet homie. We hadn't met yet, and I listened to Mega Ran. I did the same stuff with Ran stuff that sounded good, and I felt like was produced well. As far as like the nerdy hip hop that had good sound quality, I just take it to people and ask them like what was making this stuff stand out and be clear and sound like a good mix, so that I could do it. And at this whole time, I'm putting stuff online and doing content marketing. So like, I say that to say I have no problem with anybody putting stuff out there, but you should. The best way for you to, I think, when you put stuff out there, especially when it's on the internet in an online community, or whether it's on YouTube or what have you, you take away the yes man risk immediately. You take away the groupthink risk immediately. And so, because the people are always going to tell you you're dope who like you.
But yeah, Rob's always going to like your shit.
Right. So but when somebody's like, yo, this mix is garbage, and you're like, is it really garbage? And you have a consensus there, you're like, oh, well, let me go back and work on this. I think that's where a VPC is valuable. But for the people that are like, I'm coming for heads, like, for example, we're doing a show, me, Richie, IQ, One Up, and Samus are going on a mini tour on the East Coast next week. Wreck the System's opening for us in the DC area. One of the guys from Wreck the System was like, I just hope you know that we're going to be trying to destroy y'all on this show. And Lady J was like, we're serious like that. I'm like, nah. Think like that. That's how you should be thinking if you're doing anything. Like, to go back on the previous point, like, it's about the learning game. It's about the community feedback, but it's also about, I think, coming for heads. And there has to be that duality there for you to improve. Like, you're trying to take something over.
So on the topic of community feedback, just to kind of put an insert because it's pretty relevant, Artemis asked, do you guys read the feedback that other people leave in the group before you judge, and do other people's feedbacks have any impact on your thoughts when you're actually judging and scoring?
No, at least not me. I purposefully I don't read the Unheard Nerd feedback. I try to stay away from reading what people's favorites are, because I don't want to go in with that bias. And, like, for example, with round 2, like, honestly, like, I think I scored Starbo Rob maybe a half point too low compared, or maybe even a full point, because everybody gave 9, 9.5, 9.75, and I came with an 8, But had I looked and, like, read the reviews that Forrest put on Unheard Nerd, or just looked at the feedback, I would have probably been like, oh, so Starbo Rob's the best, let me give them a 10, So I think it would take away from the integrity of the judging. Like, in my honest opinion, I feel like their first song, which I gave a 9, was better than their second song, which I gave an 8. So that's why, I gave it an 8, because I was like, well, I like the other song a little bit better, so I think I should probably give this one an 8. And that's where my decision really came from in perspective to everything else. But honestly, I think the reason is because when you're judging, you put your opinion out there for other people to judge. It's kind of like this judgeception that occurs. So,
sure.
I felt a little bad when I saw, like, damn, Starbo Rob probably should have won had I gave them, like, an extra half point or a point.
I was like, not to make you feel bad, but you lost that round for him, Richie.
I actually want to get to Starbo Rob. But you've made an interesting statement, so we're going to skip ahead in my material and get right to my next difficult-to-answer question. I want to talk about Raw Crow. Is You Is or Is You Ain't My Baby? This is a good song. This was a good submission. This was a good cover. It was technically proficient, and it was delivered well. This is also, in my opinion, the most glaring difference in judge position. Quinlan gave it a 10. Richie, you gave it a 9. Desh, almost a 10, a 9.75. Amongst the three of you, this was one of the highest scoring tracks in the round. Brandon gave it a 4. And in his notes, he actually mentioned, I think this is a cover of a song from Tom and Jerry, which it was. When we talk about judge integrity, how can we rectify these massive differences in scores when we see that the criteria being used to generate these scores is not aligned with the judge's intent?
If I could just briefly, I'll try not to go too long on this.
Go as long as you want. We're here for the hard questions, and these assholes are staying all night. Fucking nail them.
I'm gonna go put the chicken in the oven, so take your time, brother. I'll be right back.
Is that a poop analogy? That was another poop metaphor, wasn't it? He's got something in the oven.
Hey, we're the poop precision team. You know what I'm saying? But now, I really don't have a problem at all. I think it's awesome, honestly, that because Brandon has like a different set of tastes than I think the rest of the judges do, and I think that's super valuable. I think if I'm an artist, I would want to like see like a stronger breakdown from him just because his tastes are different. So I think that's totally cool. And I don't really have the only team like this round, the only team I feel like the discrepancy really affected negatively in a somewhat disparaging way is West Coast Finest. Because I can get his scores on everything except him. I don't know how he thought the song was that bad. And that's fine. That's his opinion. I don't really know. I don't really think there's like a rectifying that or what have you. I feel like that's just his taste. I think if he's gonna give like a low score that's like super low, especially on a song that sounds good, then maybe like, which I think all of us are guilty of in some way, just try to provide detailed feedback. I didn't do it as much in this round because the acronym was irrelevant. But the reason I set up an acronym is so I could say, hey, here's how I'm judging you. I want to hold myself accountable and being consistent that you know exactly how your vocal performance breaks down. And everybody doesn't have to do it that way. But I feel like that would be helpful in like addressing, because I've seen a few comments like about like Brandon in particular, which like I don't think he should be attacked for how he feels about music as a judge when clearly he has the pedigree to be a judge, and that's why he's here. So
he does, and I wish Richie was here, and I wish Brandon was here because I feel like I'm beating on him. He's not here to defend himself. Brandon, you heard me. Come on the show, fucking defend yourself. I want to hop now to
one. I promise.
I want to hop to Starbo Rob because we have the same exact score spread with one exception. Starbo Rob got 5 entire points higher from Brandon Hood. And I want to ask you as a judge, and I want to ask Richie as a judge, if you don't believe that's specifically because Brandon is a chiptunes guy, and this beat was specifically chiptuning.
I think you should ask that when Richie gets back, but I think so, yeah. I think that. I would think that, yeah.
And I appreciate honestly, your candor.
To speak about just Starbo Rob in particular, this has been the biggest surprise to me. Not because Robo Rob's a freaking monster production-wise, so I'm not surprised there. Starby has always seemed very like sulkish and non-confident in her delivery in the past, even with like the RPG unit stuff. That's not to say she can't rap, because she definitely can't. I've never liked her delivery because it never seemed confident. And then like both of these entries, she's just like in there. I think on my comments, I was like, I see you coming for these heads, Starby, because like. That's literally how I'm like, yo, like this is, and really, honestly, this competition has made me very happy. I wish Samus was doing it too, and
me too.
I wish Prowess was doing it because the women in this competition are like murdering. And I think like if West Coast Finest hadn't had the hook violation in the last round, then they would be doing a lot better too.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
So that's really freaking cool. That's not hard.
That was a great song. It just hurt that the hook violation. Like, it was a great song, though. Like, I still like it. I can jam to it.
I'm jamming to it.
It just didn't meet the criteria, and that just broke my heart a little bit. But that's cool. I think that was an interpretation thing as well.
I want to drag this out. We're going to keep talking about the team while we wait for Richie, because I think Starby is another really good example, kind of like Shubzilla. Now, Starby is a unique example, in my opinion. She is pedigreed nerdcore royalty. Her attachment to Robo Rob, her very first foray was with RPG Unit. Her first single was a massive hit via Kotaku and the spread with Vault Hunters. I think that she stepped into a very intimidating role as a brand new artist, and we saw them perform in the first VPC, right? And I think she's another example of an artist who, while cutting her teeth and being new, has really found a voice, and a lot of us, for the first time, are giving her a second consideration as a performer. So I think that's a lot of fun. Richie, did you hear any of that while you were gone?
Yeah, man. So
talk to me about why Starbo Rob got 5 points more from Brandon in their scoring.
Speaker, you're such a savage, dude. Anyway.
We ask the hard questions on Nerdcore Meow. And I know you guys work with him. I don't know if Crandroids will ever do a Chiptunes album or Magfest, but fucking Brandon, I'm coming for your nuts today.
Hey, I think, it is, there is always, especially in music and any judgment of any sort of art, you know, there's always going to be like a bias of some sort. Like, for example, European car, and this isn't even art, this is just general, like, you know, life, but like, you know, car magazines, the Corvette is like really dope. It's a really dope sports car, and it's actually surpassed a lot of Italian sports cars just in terms of performance. But the European attitude is always like, oh, the Corvette, that's what people with mullets drive, and it's not that cool, you know? And that's a bias that they have just because of where they come from, the pedigree that they have. So if that could be done on consumer products that people buy, then imagine what it's like in the art world, where art is always something that's subjective. There's no objective way to judge art. And I think that Brandon has his own tastes, which are different, but no less valid. You know?
Okay, no less valid, but then let's rephrase that and consider how valid it really is. If we can rearrange the words you just said from a judge's perspective in a music contest, that while hip-hop focused is non-genre specific, your recommendation, straight-faced, to the participants is be as chiptune as you can in order to play to the favoritism of one judge. Like that's really what you just said. And that you don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Well, no, not that now, but see, you got to even look at it. If I were to say, guys, be chiptune and you can get a 10 from Brandon, but how will that affect everybody else's score? You know? So it's like, if you look at it from just a general point of view, the chiptune songs, and this, if Brandon's score was like somehow, if the weight of his score, no, okay, his score will make his score has made or broken some teams that, like, I think R.A. Crow might have won if Brandon gave him an 8, you know, 7, you know. And I know, like I said, the technicality of the, you know, the keys weren't exactly perfect, but I mean, you go to a live jazz show, I mean, a lot of that's not going to be perfect. I looked at it like, I sort of envisioned it. I didn't think that they replayed it a whole bunch of times. I thought they just ran through it all in one take, you know, on each instrument. And so I sort of expected, I looked at those subtle imperfections as far as the piano playing, actually as, you know, a strength almost in that's how jazz is, you know.
Well, sure, freeform jazz leaves a lot of area for that kind of interpretation, right?
Yeah.
But even if it was extremely technically proficient, in fact, I am of the opinion, I'm going to say it flat out, if we had a perfect example of a freeform jazz song submitted to this competition that perfectly fit the criteria for this challenge, we took a Big Joe song and did it just right, I still believe Brandon would harshly criticize and lowly score that track, not because it failed to meet any of the criteria of the challenge and not because it was proficient or improficient in its technicals, but because it doesn't pre-prescribe to the format that he believes these songs should fit. We can take that as a given, right? The world ain't fair. I fucking don't care one way or the other. But as far as this roundtable is concerned, is that something that should be taken into consideration when submitting tracks for round 3? Or should we, in intentional defiance, not limit our artistic and intellectual contributions?
I think it should be taken into consideration by I think you need to create what you feel like creatively you get out of the challenge, and just make some honest music. Because I think Brandon is kind of, I think we're like the antitheses of each other as far as judges go. Because I think he is following a format and he's sticking to it, and I'm following a format and sticking to it, and that has led me to give high scores to stuff I don't really quote unquote like, because I still think it's being proficiently delivered based on the metrics that I set for how I was going to be judging vocal performance with the overall feel included into it. And I kind of get the feel that he's doing something similar to that. So
even in this realm of a gray area, we should still play to our audience.
I think you need to play to yourself, like anything you do, like you play to yourself.
Okay, so then you're begging a question that Klopp just brought up, and that's the intent of the message, right? And who does that really fall on? We argue this in Nerdcore all the time. If I, as a listener, don't appropriately receive the message you intended to convey, is that my fault or yours?
I think that's the contender's fault, because that's what he made. But I feel like that's a risk you need to take. High risk, high reward. Like people on Wall Street aren't out here like trying to blame the market if their investments don't work. They know what they got themselves into. If they lose 500K, they lose 500K, period.
Well, not since the jumpers of the 80s, but yeah.
Well, see, and I think like with Brandon's scoring specifically, just to speak to it, I think he's like the type that if he likes your shit, he likes it, you know. But if he doesn't like it, then he really doesn't like it. I don't think there's like an in-between gray area with him, and that's fine. You know, that's his prerogative, and I don't, you know, like I said, it's no less valid than mine. But I've noticed that, like, you know, the song that's good to him is good to him. The song that's not good to him is, oh shit, you're shit out of luck.
I'm also gonna say that, like, you know, I picked Brandon as a judge for a reason, and that's for the difference of opinion. Instead of everything just being judged within our own little group, as it tends to be, you know, it's nerdcore for the most part it's a clique, you know, and a lot of it can be a little circle jerky. So if you take out some of that and put in someone who is still, you know, a very experienced music connoisseur, just in a different but slightly related genre, I think it's really important for people to get an outside perspective. You know, because I mean that's real life in the end. You know, that outside perspective.
But Whitney, also to that point, I'm kind of to that point, or more piggybacking off of it.
Yeah.
Like Brandon's part of, and like one of the managers of one of the most like helpful nerdy communities on the internet. I think if you're looking at your score with a side eye as an artist, you kind of have to step back and recognize that this dude is like doing a lot for the community, and not like this isn't like an ill-intention thing, you know.
There we go. So when we're talking about the justifiable position from which Brandon is judging these tracks, it doesn't come down to any kind of moral platitudes, right? I believe, and we've just hit on it, and we want to reiterate this, that all of our judges have 100% valid opinions to articulate, and Brandon is coming from an incredibly successful adjacent group with the Nerdcore VPC, and his inclusion, I think, is important.
He's just a savage like you, Beaker. That's kind of how I feel like, you know, if Beaker were judging. And
I'm not going to hate on savage.
That's literally a thought that I had earlier while you guys were talking. It is literally like if Beaker were judging, you know. He's honest. He gives a relatively decent critique. You know, there's some that he skips over, but I can understand why, especially, like, you know, if you don't know if it's a troll or not. And it can be blunt. But it's still absolutely valid.
There's nothing wrong with being blunt.
Absolutely.
Last VPC, Steve Perry gave Supervillain a 7, and I was blood mad about it because I thought that song was immaculate, and Richie put his foot in it. Richie put his foot in that track so hard that I had no choice but to destroy it. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, how in the world did he give this song a 7? But Steve's the homie, and I know where Steve's coming from how he's judging. So it's cool. I just vehemently disagree with him about that score to this day. So, like, cool. That happens. That's part of the process. That's the point I was trying to make through that. But, yeah.
Yeah, like Supervillain, that's the perfect example of a situation where it was like, what the hell? Hold on. My volume went out. No, but yeah, it was like, man, I composed the fucking organ fugue in that song. I was like, I feel like that was the best song of our run. Like, all 5 songs we did, I felt like that was the best one. We got a 7, you know? So, in that one, everybody else was like, 10, 9, 7, you know? Fuck you, Steve Perry. I see you.
Exactly,
Goddamn right.
Steve's comment is still a 7. He says you're still a 7. Sorry.
Hey,
I had to be sorry, not him, by the way.
They gave Mozart a 5 when he was alive. He didn't start getting 10s until 200 years after he died, so it's cool.
Wow, what a stretch. The Nerdcore Mozart, and we just didn't fucking realize it.
No, really, no. They thought Mozart was whack when he was alive. Like, they passed him up on jobs and shit. Like, he was really treated like.
I mean, he was a total asshole too.
Yeah.
All right, so what about total assholes and classical influences? Another track I want to cover by name is Faded Rebellion. And specifically because we are embracing and actually celebrating the women of nerdcore. And I think this is another super strong offering from one of the women in nerdcore. Wreck the System Records, who we've all become familiar with after they absorbed Ali Desu into their collective, and she is one of the most shameless, shit-pushing self-promoters I have ever met in my life. It could literally snow albums, and that girl would be out plowing them into your fucking driveway at 4 in the morning. So Faded Rebellion, Stronger Than You. I actually really enjoyed this, and I kind of, this is one of the few tracks where I agreed with literally every single judge in their analysis. Even Brandon, with his typically low score, I kind of buffer him with 2 extra points in any direction and feel like they make a little more sense to me. I'm particularly interested from a production perspective, Richie. You scored this one right in the middle. Everybody else was a little higher than you. What did you think of a straightforward cover of a theme song for this challenge?
I thought it was cool. You know, like I said, if you do a straightforward cover of anything, I'm sure better try to match the original's quality as much as possible. That's why I think it's so important. Like with some of these entries that scored a little lower for trying to do the same thing. Like if you can't do it in the exact way it was done, if that's what you're aiming for with the cover, you should flip it. Do it something different. You know, if it was a jazz song, you should maybe do it in a rock form or whatever form plays to your strengths. And with this song, I think they did that while still sort of being straightforward with it. You know, they were able to put together a good product. For me, like, I gave it an 8 because there was a couple of just production little things that I noticed that sort of dragged it down to me, namely with the kicks. When there was parts where the verses start back up after a bridge where the kick quantization wasn't exactly on point, so it sort of dragged it a little bit to where the ear sort of guessed where the beat was coming back in. And it wasn't like where you do a standard, like if you drop the kick, you know, it was where the kick that was coming after the drop kick was off. So it was like, well, where's the beat? I don't know. So that was really it to me. And then the actual doubles on the vocals were a little off. That's another tip, guys. When you're recording your doubles, and producers, really, you need to be the ones doing this. When an artist sends you their main vocal and their double vocal, you have to go into each double and make sure you line up the waveform so you don't get that stutter effect where, you know, you'll have doubles and they seem out of place with the actual main vocal. Like, move them over and take the time to actually adjust them and get them right. And that's worth a couple points, you know, to me at least, you know. Like,
worth a couple points.
Yeah, you're taking the extra step as a producer to say, okay, I got the vocals. I'm not just throwing them in there. I hear these doubles are out of place. Let me move them over and match them up right so the recording sounds consistent. Yeah, in an ideal world, in a perfect world, your doubles should not even be able to be heard. You know, they should really be low unless it's for an added effect. Like if you're doing like a hook or something and you obviously want it to sound choral, then yeah, that's fine. But your verse doubles shouldn't be so prominent, and if they're off, that makes them even more, you know, prominent, and it makes it sound a lot worse if you have prominent doubles that are off. You know, they're not aligned with the main vocal. So just take the extra time to do that, man. And that's, in this case, those little things, you know, really prevented me from giving it like a 9.5, which I would have given if that was perfect to me, or at least good enough. So
that's an awesome perspective on what I totally agree with you, was a song that was like 90% there. And again, when we have a team that we know what to expect, we've got minor technical problems that are evidence, right, of either a lack of skill, which we know is not the case here, or maybe a crunch time frame. And it's these little things that, for me, and it sounds like for you too, make a track obviously shortlisted when somebody or a team ran out of time.
Are we still talking about Faded Rebellion? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm assuming that Richie talked about like inconsistencies and like
He actually
levels and
said that it
lining
was
things
it was a
up.
perfect example of a modern American music classic, and that he looked forward to your analysis. I'm glad you've returned. What is your feeling on the track?
um, so again, I just mainly focused on vocals. I shouldn't keep saying that because y'all know already. But I really, really enjoyed that song. I heard you say that it felt like it was 90% there. I totally agree with that. With Lady J, when I first heard Lady J rap, and I know she's been mixing and doing some production work for a while and hadn't really been on the vocal side, I was like, so she's just going to start rapping now? So I didn't want to like pass judgment immediately because do what you do. But she's like kind of turned into kind of a bit of a monster, and I think that's really awesome. Like, and there are little things that have knocked me down to where like this was to me from a feel standpoint a 9.5, 9.75 type thing. The first round was the same deal. The first round, it was that she flubbed some of her delivery when she started going fast. This round was that she totally owned the recording, owned what she was doing, but it was pitchy, and it was pitchy a lot. But what she did overall was so good to me from a pure vocal delivery standpoint and how she came at the track that the pitchiness didn't really bother me enough to heavily affect the score. That's how good of a job she does. And I feel like she's a sleeper. It's legitimately like I feel like this competition is going to end up being oh my one up preventing the top three from being all women.
Interesting statement, and you heard it here first.
But it's very like these ladies are strong. Even with Allie, like I think she tries to do too much when she goes fast. I feel like she should just ride the beat a little bit more. But like she delivers strong performances. Lady J's delivering really strong performances. If she cleans up like two things on everything she does, she's gonna be owning people. And that's kind of how I felt about this track.
It's interesting you mention Allie because we're going on to her next with B-Type, Magical Beer Squad. And I'm actually not surprised you mentioned her because again, this is a track that had pitch issues, but it didn't bother you. It did bother the other judges. What do we think about Magical Beer Squad and their submission? This was a unique track for the round in that it was a K-pop cover, but it was not unique in that it was covered from a different cultural perspective. We'll phrase it that way because we are going to talk about Bohemian Rhapsody tonight.
I'll be short and start this off since I just mentioned her. But I think Allie sings really well most of the time. I think she's pitchy when she tries to do too much, the same way that she's unclear when she raps when she tries to do too much. And on the flip side of that, I think it's awesome that she's challenging herself when she's trying to do what she does. Because every track I've ever heard from her is like her pushing herself, and it doesn't always work perfectly. And I'm totally okay with that conceptually, which I guess is probably where my score comes from. Because I feel like I understand what she's doing. So I felt like the way she switched between singing and that kind of, excuse the term, that kind of Becky rap type deal is like super dope, and she's super dope at it. She just needs to be cleaner with everything. And again, if she cleans up a little bit, she'll literally own people. So that's where I am.
All right, that's where you're at. So, Richie, same question, different perspective. You don't touch on the same issues, though I can't believe that they were completely avoidable by you. You fired a 6.5 off. This is right in the middle. This one was right in the middle of the road for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to expand on that, or are we happy just saying like?
This was actually one of those tracks where me and Brandon sort of saw eye to eye, in terms of.
Interestingly enough, right?
And I think a lot of our deductions came from the same spot, having to do with the vocals. Like the vocals didn't seem like, and this is another tip too. When you're putting your vocals in the song, if you drop them in there, there's going to be points where the beat overpowers the vocals. There's going to be points where the beat may be understated and the vocals sound just right. So you got these flat vocals and you've got the beat kind of doing this over them. So that was the case here. It sounded like there was a lot of work needed on getting the vocals to sound consistent throughout the whole song in terms of, matching the volume level of the beat, and so that could be something, where, from a production standpoint on the actual track, you may want to mix the track around the vocals. If that's how you guys did it, where, she sent you the vocals and you just dumped them on the track, sometimes it helps to go back into the track and adjust some of the, the gain and the panning of your instruments and whatnot so that it all works with the vocals. Or you may go in and actually adjust the vocals here and there, but I'd rather see a beat done where it complements the vocals in every spot. So if you've got a hell of a lot of instruments and it's getting loud and the beat is just going to overpower the vocals, you may want to do some EQ work, and carve out some of the frequencies where her vocal range is going to pop out more. And so I like to look at, the beat versus the vocals, as they all have to occupy a certain level of sonic space from left to right and also varying frequencies along the spectrum. So, please use EQ on the beats, on the instruments, and make sure that your overall beat, should there should not be spots in your beat where, if you look at the waveform, where it just gets crazy and it gets real quiet and gets crazy. You should be trying to get that as perfectly, consistent as possible across the board, so that when you have your vocals in there, it makes it a lot easier to, mix the vocals without, having to worry about that. And
with one exception, dubstep needs to look like a hemorrhage, but everything else, yes, nice and smooth.
Yeah, the wobble bass, these you need to see those, but yeah, you just have to, get those vocals on there good, man. But that's another song that could have been an easy 8 to me, 8.5, if those things were taken into consideration on a production standpoint.
So, with that in mind, I want to talk about my favorite track of the round. TextFam represents, highly scored by everybody, tied for 3rd place, and as mentioned just previously, quite possibly the only team to disrupt an all-woman show by the end of this tournament. One up in MCO My. By name alone, you would not have guessed the cover that this song was based on, but as soon as it begins, it's immediately identifiable. This was one of the catchiest sample-based tracks of the round. Ray Charles, Hit the Road Jack, for Pokemon Go. Can we just gush and have something good to talk about for this round? Can we talk about something that was great just for 5 minutes?
Can I start for 1 second?
Yeah.
This track is the perfect example of, I think, what we were all looking for. They took something, they still did a cover, but they added in some verses and they really made it their own. There was so much artistic leeway for this that so few utilized, and that this one just made me so happy because it was everything that I wanted to hear.
The baby really liked it. He was excited. He woke up to talk about this one.
There you go.
Parenthood, man.
It's pretty fun. Pretty fun.
Yeah.
Oh man, should we spoil it? I don't know. Little Richie Branson's running around. Is it too quiet? Is my audio getting picked up? Tee-hee! I can't wait. My boys are gonna fight over your little girl. It's gonna be awesome.
Wait, hold on. What? Did I miss? What?
No, I'm talking to you, Kadish Flow.
Yo.
So this track.
Oh my God. Anyway, okay.
This track Hit the Road Jack. Absolutely one of the best of the round. What do we think kept this out of a top slot? Why are we tied for 3rd? Universally liked, extremely highly rated.
My score probably gave it an 8.
Well, let's push it over the top. Where did those last 2 points go? If we got an example here of a great cover that really hit the elements of the challenge, what were we missing to have a perfect sweep?
To me, the only reason I docked points on this, I thought everything was great. The panning of the instruments. This goes back to the Magical Beer Squad. This song here, they took the extra steps to make sure that the production, match the vocals, and they panned instruments. You'd hear snares popping over here, hi-hats, bouncing across the stereo field. Those things make a difference in terms of, I call it ear candy. It had dope ear candy. Now, the only thing that I took points off on my end was actually, and I felt like I would have scored it lower if it wasn't for that Sound of Music transition they did. I felt like that was actually more of a cover than just having the Hit the Road Jack sampled in the beat. And I think I put that.
Interesting.
I was like, it sounds like a rap song with the Hit the Road Jack sample hook, as opposed to an actual cover like where you're actually saying the words, hit the road, Jack. Like if he would have said it, it would have probably not been so much of a cover. It would have been so much of a sample track as opposed to a cover in that case. But the favorite things really saved my score from going lower to like a 7.5 or a 7. So,
really, it was the ear candy kept it in the 8 range. You could have had this as low as a 6 if there weren't dynamic samplings going on.
Exactly. I felt like the sampling was against the spirit of actually doing the cover to me, and so that's why I kind of, But the song was so good though. I was like, well, shit, and I felt like it wasn't all the way out of it. Like if I were to dock it for not being the cover at all, I would give it like a 5 or so. But I felt like it still had that cover element, and the fact that they did the favorite things, like he actually reciting the words, that made that part of cover. And so I was like, well, they did cover something, so here's an 8,
So,
but it was dope. It was really dope. Like that song was amazing. It's just
this sampling was too far away from a cover for you, but using crisscross for REM, that fell right in line with your vision.
Because that was the actual beat, but the actual lyrics were, on the "It's the End of the Road" stuff. So because they were covering a song, because they were covering "It's the End of the World," and they actually they were actually rapping or whatever you want to call it. They were actually vocalizing that. That's why I felt that was more of a cover per se, And for them, I think I gave them an 8.5. Yeah,
a flat 8.
Oh, I gave them a flat 8 too.
You did indeed.
Oh.
So that's an interesting point to say. I mean, how do you, as the judges, define a cover then? Like, what was your line drawing between what is a cover and what is not? Because that has been
get out your umbrellas. We're brewing up the shitstorm.
Hot topic.
So, you want to go? You can go if you want to go.
I look at it from an industry point of view. Like in the industry, if you were to do a cover of a song, you would have to get a mechanical license, which you can do, and it's hella affordable. And you're not actually taking words from the actual recording of the original song. Now, when you're sampling, they don't treat that as a cover. You have to get permission from the owner of the actual recording as well as a songwriter, and it's $20,000, $30,000 to clear the sample. So that's what I look at it like. Like, if it's a cover, you should be able to run out and get a mechanical license for the lyrics themselves and be set. But if you're sampling the song that you're intending on covering, then it's not a cover. And that's why the other team, it's the end of the end of the world, and it's song. They were sampling something, but that's not what they were covering. They were covering a completely different song. So I took that into consideration. Don't sample what you cover. And
fair enough.
That's
good rule of thumb, really. What about you, Desh? You had interesting notes on this one, in my opinion. Overall, this track is cool. 9.5. The singing could have been more convincing. Seemed to have been your only complaint. What was that half point for you? Was it really just the singing was delivered a little flat?
Yeah, really. That's literally it. I thought the song was dope. I thought the sample was cold. And like I said, I'm a little looser on the challenges, so I tried not to have too much of a mindset there because I expected it to vary. But I love Oh My's delivery. I think it's super cool that they flip-flopped and they're still crushing it from the last VPC.
Really? Yeah, that's great.
And his, which I mean, honestly, I feel like we would do. My beats wouldn't be as good. but the, Omar has this really wry sort of delivery in everything he does, even when he's kind of talking about more serious matters. But I think they match as a team because they're both really goofy lyrically, but they have bars. And so, like, I really just appreciate what Omar is bringing to the table in this competition and what he does on a regular basis. So, really, I know he can, like, sing on pitch. I know he has a background of this is one of those things where I said, maybe an hour ago that some people, I feel like the only thing where I'm unfair as a judge is when I know people can do better. And Oh My, I know, has a strong music background, and I know he's capable, even if he's not a strong singer from a vocal standpoint, he can hear well enough to deliver a good on-pitch singing performance, and he didn't. So I feel like he kind of let this slide a little bit, and that bothered me. And that's where the half-point deduction is, because that would have been a 10 without it, and that was just me being picky. So I really, really, really enjoyed this song. To your earlier question from maybe 10 minutes ago about why this wasn't first, I think it wasn't first because of Richie's 8 in combination with Brandon's really liking Dystopia.
Good perspective. So, and just an offshoot question from the Peanut Gallery here. Do you believe an opportunity was missed by this team by not covering a Will Smith song?
I expected them to, but I kind of feel like that would have happened if One Up were rapping and not Oh My. So, like, I kind of get it. So I'd say like 60% yes.
Just a note, though, Dash. Brandon actually gave that one a 10 as well.
I know he did, but like
Yeah.
he really loved Dystopia, and if I remember the Dystopia score is right, I don't think I thought the Dystopia song was dope.
Yeah.
But I don't think everybody else was as high on it as Brandon and I were.
They were. Yeah, you guys. Richie and Thomas were lower on this one than they were on Dystopia.
That's kind of more where I meant.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So before everybody, this has been going on a long time. We've been bullshitting for a hot minute. A lot of guys got blown over, and as you can tell from the dialogue this evening, you're probably lucky if you were considered middle of the road and not torn apart here. We've got one hot contention song that we're going to talk about before we wrap this up. But before we get into it, we're going to carry on this.
Can I start this, by the way? Can I start this?
You absolutely can, but we're going to ride out the cover thing a little harder. Zarina, if I was to look at the vpc4.nerdcore.co/index page, I've got all of round 2's tracks listed here, but right above that is the challenge, or at least the explanation of the challenge. Are these an exact copy of the rules as they were presented for the challengers?
The challenge at the top is a literal copy and paste of the challenge that was put up on Facebook.
Okay, so if we're going to, I want to address this for Josh. I want to hit it.
Can I just say, the only thing that's not included are when people ask questions in the questions and comments section. Those are obviously not included on the webpage because that's conversations that take place in a comment section.
Okay, all right, and so assuming that we're just talking about the instructions we have at hand and skipping the entire first chapter or the first paragraph of bullshit, what we have for instructions here are: your submitted song can be in the style of hip-hop or any other genre you want. The original song you choose to cover cannot be hip-hop. You will be required to submit a link to the original piece that you cover.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to be an ass. Josh, we do a lot of work together. You're one of my favorite people. I don't understand where your misunderstanding stems from. This seems straightforward. It seems easy. Don't cover a rap song. Do it in whatever genre you want. And I'm looking live to the comments. If we have some points that we want to discuss directly here, I would love to get into them. If anybody wants to chime in and say, I was confused by these directions and here's why, I would love to cover that as well.
Mm-hmm.
To front end that challenge piece, I do think that the round 3 challenge is the most clear that we've had, and I don't want to steal y'all's thunder. I think like what you do is really great, both from like what you do with this competition in general and how you generate the challenges, what you think about. I do feel like language-wise, it would be helpful, Whitney, if you ran it by us. Ran like, so the challenge is fine. If you ran like how you're stating the challenge by us, like a decent amount of time before you post it, so that we could chime in on like, hey, maybe this, if I'm an artist, I may not necessarily get this as well as you might think. That might be helpful.
Cash Flow's looking for a raise, wants a bigger office. You can run this show next year.
I ain't trying to, I'm not about that life.
That's totally fair, and I did do that for round 1. The issue with that is that, again, the conversations tend to move so fast.
Yeah, true.
That then there's only so many times I can ask before it has to go live.
I would say that the best step here, and Josh is saying it wasn't his question, and he doesn't recall who asked it, so I hope we clarified it. And the takeaway from this should be, if you have questions, reach out. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to Zarina. Of course, she's going to be your preferred point of contact. If you just feel more comfortable using this as an excuse to send Richie Branson your first love note on Facebook, do it. Let him know that you think he's handsome, you love his rap style, and that you'd like some advice on the next challenge and the parameters there. Nobody's going to bite your hand.
Not gonna. I did send Richie Branson a YouTube message before we ever started working together. I also asked Mega Ran if I could intern for him. I shouldn't talk about Corey Vodka, but anyway, I like that was a whole lot. But I asked Mega Ran if I could intern for him too. Just fun facts about Desh. Anyway.
Well. I hope you get the job, and I hope it pays well.
Well, he forgot about it, and I reminded him about it at MagFest in the hotel room. I was like, "Hey, you remember when I emailed you and asked if?"
That's always the most appropriate place to talk about work, is inside a hotel room.
But anyway, sidebar.
But anyway, let's talk about something else that can go like horribly wrong in a hotel room, and that is Swedish raps. This track has generated a lot of discussion. And for good reason. We've got and again, I'm hitting on Brandon. I'm sorry, buddy, but you were kind of the source for a lot of the debate here. This was a cover.
It wasn't just Brandon, though.
It wasn't just Brandon.
No, in the comments, Desh has the same opinion and says it's not a cover. So we can't just pinpoint Brandon in that one. He had stronger comments about it, but they both did agree that it wasn't a cover. Which we had a conversation offline before voting and comments went out too, where we had a long debate about that. But yeah.
Yeah. To like just kick this off, because I don't know if y'all saw the Nerdcore Hip Hop Exchange, thanks to Richie's post about comments where Sean Solo was asking, and I responded to like what I thought. And if I had seen a translation, I would have given a higher score. I still don't. I'm still sketchy on the cover aspect. So I said I docked him 2 points off of the cover piece. It didn't necessarily matter a whole lot based on their overall score. But my response to Sean Solo was that if you're going to take a risk, you need to go out of your way to express the risk. He responded, and this was a very fair response, that when the auto message on the entries when they actually submit their stuff for the VPC is that we'll reach out, or the VPC will reach out if there are any questions. I think that the language of that auto message is a bit of a liability because everybody's doing a lot of stuff. I feel like everybody who's judging this competition is like really, really busy. Richie's being hella legit. Thomas and Brandon are being hella legit. I'm trying to make moves and not being out here trying to function or whatever. So that's something that I actually meant to say privately, but I guess it's like a cool thing now.
I mean, I can see your point, but basically what that's saying is literally, if there's any issues with your track or any additional information required with your submission, a member will be in touch with you ASAP. That's regarding, like, if the track doesn't come across, attached, it's missing part of the track.
Failed to meet your submission requirements, name, email, shit like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not talking about if the judges have a question about the content of your submission. It's literally about the submission process.
Okay. Well, even if you did have a question, right? We established earlier that the failure to receive the appropriate message should be on the sender because they didn't articulate the message appropriately. Now, my follow-up question here, and I think it's valid, and Richie, I hope you're listening because I want your input as well. Is your cultural ignorance justifiable? Is it an affirmative defense to missing something as obvious as, in this question, the nature of this cover? The only difference here was a language barrier, and hip-hop has dealt with that since its inception, whether it's through vernacular, through drawl, through accents, or through foreign language and the incorporation of other cultures. This is not new. It may be new to the VPC, but it's not new in general. Is it okay to say, I just didn't realize what this was, and therefore it has lesser value in the competition?
Not lesser value, but it does. It still is on the person making the submission. Like, somebody needs to come out. Like, it should. I don't think it should be the judge's responsibility to say, hey, I'm gonna go figure out what language this is in, and then go look up a translation of the lyrics that weren't posted in the original language that it was performed in, and see what it actually says. Like, I feel like with Sean, and like, I have a lot of respect for the dude as an artist and as a person. I don't think we ever met in person, but like, as far as like what he does and what he seems to represent, I'm totally down. And we had a super respectful exchange, and I get where he's coming from. But I still think if you're in, like, for a future reference, like, judging is like an extra thing, and this is like an enjoyable process, but you should take the precaution to say, okay, if you're going to do a song in another language, if you're going to do anything extra that might be questioned, if it might be questioned, don't just post on the Nerdcore Hip Hop group about it. Like, actually put it in your submission and make sure it ends up on the SoundCloud entry. That, like, even if it's just your lyrics and translation. Like, if I had seen the lyrics in the original language, I would have been like, oh, these lyrics I was like, oh, I could copy and paste these lyrics, and I would be like, oh, well, I can, like, actually take these and see what they actually mean, and that would have helped. But there was nothing there besides the entry. So,
I agree with that. I actually Googled the title, and nothing comes back to indicate that this is Swedish. Nothing comes back to indicate that it translates to Bohemian Rhapsody, right? The word Rhapsody is not that far off. It's an indicator, but Fatiglaps is not, that the first thing I think of is not Bohemian.
No.
So
one more thing. The song, to me, sounded really good.
So you did like the song overall. It had that replayability factor. It had the shine. Just this is one of those elements. And Josh brings up a good point. The wording we used was free artistic reign. So it should be implied that maybe a little heads up, like, hey, this is in Swedish, by the way. Here's what I'm covering. But that also was included in the instructions, right? The source material should have been attached.
It was attached, and it was provided to the judge with a link to the YouTube video, which was the source.
Ooh. Wait,
the judge's spreadsheet is literally the team name. The next column is the track with a link to the SoundCloud, and then the column after that is the original track with the link to the original song.
And taking that into consideration, we have a cover by Element, but without the lyrical content being obvious, is it fair to say this was enough of a cover without any other elements being recognizable?
I don't think the link to the original song matters if it's in another language. Just throwing it out there. Like,
so just having the insight as to what it was supposed to be covering wouldn't be sufficient.
No, because they could have added extra verses. It was rapped.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
I think that's totally irrelevant as far as like what is, because I saw all of that, but I don't think that matters as far as like what are you actually saying from a cover standpoint.
I gave it a 7.5, and honestly, to be completely honest, I saw Rhapsody and I was like, all right, it's a cover of the Bohemian Rhapsody. I just figured. I didn't extra I just gave them the benefit of the doubt because I thought the language change was impressive. So I was like, yes, they're saying everything from Bohemian Rhapsody. I only docked points from them. I gave them a 7.5. There were some issues with the tonality of the beat that I took off a little bit for. And then the rest was just I didn't really feel I didn't really feel that there was any, I didn't really feel that there was any outside of the lyrics themselves that I assumed were from the Bohemian Rhapsody. I didn't feel like there was any other covery aspect to it, but I didn't dock them for it not being a cover. I just felt like it was. Now to go back to the Dystopia song, like that was far from the original vibe of the song, but I think they intentionally did that in a way that was like, oh my god, they mashed it up, but it was still covering that. They didn't just slap the recording from the covered song on whatever. But with this one, I felt like it was a little far removed from it in a way that I couldn't really get any emotional attachment to the original recording from, or any sort of like, it's not like the other song where they did that just to flip it all the way around and say, look, this shit is crazy, right? And it's like, oh, my mind is exploding because they actually, they covered this song in the exact fashion of an old Crisscross song. This was kind of, they took it all the way out of its original element. I didn't hear any melodic elements in the production that indicated that it was from Bohemian Rhapsody. So I took off a little bit, but I still gave him a good score. I thought it was good. I thought it was really good, and I felt that, I didn't really take anything away from the fact that it was in another language. It was more from a production standpoint where I did a lot of my point shading, if you will.
Interesting. You guys, this was a really neat VPC roundtable for a lot of reasons. We haven't had one in a while. You guys, I think, have an excellent and unique perspective, being previous contest winners, both highly established in nerdcore and in your careers. There's only one last question to ask, I guess two really, and we can wrap up this shit show. Number one, what team are you looking forward to the most next round?
Honestly, for me, I'm looking forward to Dystopia. They've been just being crazy. Like, their stuff is crazy. And also Custom Prize Joker, I like their beats. Custom Prize Joker has some of the most, their production as far as their beats change up throughout, they evolve through the whole thing, and like that, their production is always a gem to listen to. So Project Zero, I think, is their guy. Project Zero, you're killing it on the beats, man. I like them. Also, all the top tier teams really that are within that top grouping right now. Lex and Clop and Pop.
Lex and Clop are mine. I'm looking for. I can tell they weren't on the same page with this track, but they were on the same page with their first round track. I'm looking forward to round 3.
Their round 0 song was a 10. That was the only 10 that I've thought of so far.
Their round 0 song
was so stupidly nasty.
That's why we're not talking about round 0. Oh it wasn't even a contest.
Oh my god, they just came in. Oh my god. Anyway, yeah.
It was gross.
It was gross. It was really unfair, actually. But I would say definitely I'd say the top 6. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Starbo Rob responds. I really I want to see what Lady J does. I'm really, I guess, obviously, if you haven't guessed it, the ladies in these competition, if there's anybody I'm rooting for, I think it would be dope to see an all-lady top 3. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be close to happening. And also with the EL and solo act, I feel like I expect Sean Solo to come with it vocally next round, even if it's to spite this situation and me and Brandon, especially because I haven't I've heard stuff from him where he really goes in, and I haven't necessarily heard that last round, and I know he can, and I feel like he's going to before this competition's over.
You feeling like El Solo is going to go in on the raps before the contest is over?
Oh yeah. And
interesting perspective.
I'm very excited about that happening. But I guess who else? Scotty Wu and Ishida. Both of them go hard. I know Ishida's got history. We'll leave that alone.
Yeah, I don't care about the history, and I agree with you. I think Scotty Wu and Ishida have a lot of potential for the competition. I'd like to see what they do.
On that note, I gotta say, with that song they put in with Beck's Loser, I was totally with it on the verses, but I hated the chorus. I actually really
agree with that
enjoyed
100%.
the verses, and I really hated the chorus. Is just killed it for me.
The hook was a crusher for that track.
Yeah.
I could live with one experience with Ishida's raps that wasn't just soaked head to tail in fucking Animu, Weeaboo, whatever. Like, just
Right?
once. You know, give me some baller fucking gangster shit that I know you can do, Ishida, and leave the fucking waifu at home. Just one fucking song. 3 minutes of your fucking life. Give me one fucking song that's not about goddamn animation and fucking Japanime.
Right?
Fuck. Well, this was a good roundtable, and we're going to come back and do it again. We're going to get Will. We're going to get Brandon. We can have a more comprehensive discussion. I want to encourage everybody that hasn't dropped yet. If you have further questions, send them our way. We can talk about them on the Facebook group. I'll get back into a hangout and do this shit live if you just want to watch me stare into the camera while I bitch at you about why your opinions and position are biased because you favor your own work where you shouldn't, and how it is not a valid point of argument for this competition. Do you have anything else to cover? Kadish Flow, right off the top of your head without thinking about it, who are you banging?
I'm not gonna say her name in public. I reconnected. I reconnected with a college flame on this West Coast tour. And
He sounds handsome.
It's pretty.
Rich.
I'm banging Screw, baby. DJ
Damn right.
Still
Beautiful.
banging.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you. Zarina, thank you very much. The competition this year has been great, and I'm looking forward to rounding it out. Round 3 is coming fast and furious, right?
Yes.
And catch us on Facebook. We don't use Twitter. Fuck Twitter. Fuck Tumblr.
We do use Twitter.
Don't. We don't
Yes,
use
I
any
do.
of that. Fuck all that.
Yes, I
You
do.
meet us on fucking
Fuck
Facebook.
you. Yes, I do.
Come into nerdcore.co. Rap battle me. And seriously, Bill Beats, I saw your fucking post. I'm looking for a Beats battle. I'm going to talk to the Zarina. Maybe round 5 is just going to have a little sub-layer with a beat battle. I'm going to show back up. Kick your ass,
maybe.
son.
Oh, Jesus.
All right, guys, thank you again very much. Say goodnight to the baby. Say goodnight to the Zarina. Say goodnight to our judges. Thank you all. VPC round 3 is coming at you. Another round table in 1 month. What else do we have? Nothing? Fuck it, we're done. Thanks, everybody.
Done.
Thanks, y'all.